The Drink Beer, Think Beer podcast is sponsored by Beer Edge. I'm Andy Crouch, the co-founder of Beer Edge, along with my partner and your podcast host, John Hall. John and I work hard to bring you fresh and insightful content related to the ever-changing world of craft beer. We're passionate about beer and independent journalism. If you're interested in supporting Beer Edge, visit our website, beeredge.com, which is updated regularly with new content, interviews, and articles. Please also consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your episodes. You can also subscribe to the Beer Edge newsletter on our website. Is there anyone you think that we should be talking to? Please drop us a line at andy@beeredge.com with your thoughts. And as always, thanks for your support.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer. It's the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall, and on the phone this week is a member of the First Name Club. It's Tomme Arthur. How are you, Tommy?
Well, you just blew it. You used my last name.
Great. Well, we're off to a fantastic start. Well, I'm going to get back to it in a second, but first a reminder that this show is produced by Beer Edge. Check out beeredge.com for articles, podcasts, and more, and also be sure to follow Beer Edge on all of your social media platforms. That includes Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Beer Edge. Tommy is part of the First Name Club, and I feel that he's been around for so long that he needs no introduction, but he really wants one. So Tommy is the founder, the brewmaster, the brains behind the Lost Abbey, which is one of Southern California's great breweries, which has been around for the better part of almost 2 decades now. I'm if my math is correct, Tommy.
14 years on our 15th as we speak.
So it's a brewery that has fundamentally shaped the course of American beer through your use of wild microbes, through your use of ingredients, through your use of innovation, dare I say. The Lost Abbey has been a gateway brewery when people are ready to step up to the next level of craft beer in their lives. It's not necessarily the first beers that you have to welcome yourself in, but it is definitely the second or third steps as you become a better beer drinker. You find Tommy's beers, you start drinking them, you start enjoying them, and you're the guy who does all of this. So thanks for being on the show.
Well, I apologize for being on the show.
I mean, truth be told, there's nobody else available. So and you said yes.
Yes, I did. I'm still a glutton for punishment. Although I do have a beer in my hand, and it's only one. It's only middle of the day here, so I'm happy to be drinking on your show.
We should be. So we're recording this about I don't know, a little less than 8 hours before this goes live. We just found out that Eddie Van Halen died. The president has COVID. The stimulus package for those who have been affected by the economic downturn related to this disease is on hold now for the next couple of weeks. And that's certainly going to impact a lot of people in beer. So drinking early, it's 4 o'clock on the East Coast right now. I'm drinking myself a boat beer from Carton because it was fresh in my fridge. How's your pandemic going, Tommy?
It's been a hell of a year. I mean, I'm glad that there's only one pandemic in our lifetime we have to deal with. So at least that's what I'm told, right?
For now, unless you don't survive this one.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for not surviving. At least you don't have to deal with the next one.
I've been on the show. I've been going back and talking to a lot of folks about January, which feels like a decade ago. But when this year started for you at the brewery, what did it look like? What were the plans for the year before everything got interrupted?
And I think the biggest thing when we turned the corner in the new year for us was that we had our new brand, Tiny Bubbles. I'd announced it in December at a conference, and I had sort of spoken to the fact that this was going to be a new, authentic alternative, in our universe, and it was going to define us, and it was going to be something we were going to put a lot of time and energy behind in 2020. We'd had the branding, the beer produced, and we were getting ready to really ramp up. And this was going to be the year of Tiny Bubbles, and just kind of us kind of not holistically reinventing ourselves, but really looking at sour beer in a can, in a smaller format, Not an oak aged long-term process, something that was a lot more available and readily, easily, sort of pushed out the door. And frankly, we were sort of, we had a lot of energy and time focused on that being a big part of this year.
And then what happened? Like,
well,
we know COVID happened, but like,
yeah,
how does that actually interrupt like a rollout?
Yeah, I mean, we were looking to kind of launch that in March, and we were going to be, we were calling it the summer of Tiny and Brutus, and Brutus is the mascot, behind the brand. And the whole premise for us was we were going to spend the entire summer sampling this beer every chance we got, all kinds of beer festivals, and we were going to have a lot of fun with Brutus, and he was going to be the personality, and he was really just going to light up, kind of light up our universe, and then of course
you light up my life.
Yeah, I grew up in that age, so we're good.
I was gonna say it's hard not to think of that song.
And
you're considerably older than I am, so
considerably. I turn a year. I turn a year older tomorrow, so.
Well, the day that this releases, happy birthday!
Thank you, I appreciate.
I didn't know Facebook didn't tell me in advance.
Not yet. So.
Or Jay Brooks's blog. Yeah.
There you go, Jay Brooks. I judged with Jay last week, but
we'll talk about judging in a second.
Yeah, we talked about being in the business a long time. I got into this business at 23, and so I've officially been in the brewing business half my life. And as long as I get out of bed every day, it'll continue to be that way, right?
So what's interesting though about Tiny Bubbles is there's like a cartoon character. It's based on like the Mr. Happy book series or what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something along those lines. I mean, he invokes that sensibility.
You got to forgive me here because like I remember, years ago when I was a young, impressionable teenager and enjoyed cigarettes, Joe Camel was around. Mm-hmm. And then there's all these things of like, well, you can't have things that like market to kids. How do you dance around that?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the initial, sort of storyboards and stuff behind it, I thought, wow, I know exactly what that looks like. Mm-hmm. But what was really funny to me was that I couldn't think of the guy's name who was the author, and I couldn't think of the actual name of the series. In fact, it took me a lot of work to figure out how to Google exactly what those books were.
I just called it Mr. Happy Guy, but like it's...
Yeah. I think the author's name is Richard Hargraves or something along those lines. But I mean, I was Googling
that's Umbrella Academy,
like single color small books, kids. I mean, it took me a lot of effort to figure out what those things were called.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's there's something to be said for the code of ethics and conduct relative to branding and marketing and things like that. But I don't know. I mean, he's cool looking, and I think the kids could find him to be fun, but we just don't advertise and we don't do that stuff. So, I mean, we're not on billboards. We're not, we're not going to have a car turning left every Sunday. So I think we're okay.
You've branched out this year. So Tiny Bubbles, the Lost Abbey has now also put out a Pilsner. The Lost Abbey has diversified, as it were, in the last couple of years. You also have the THC, the hop concept. You have all of these other brands. Port is under your portfolio as well. You have all these brands, but the Lost Abbey itself has been putting out brands that are not necessarily what we thought of, as Tommy beers, as Lost Abbey beers. Yeah. Was that something that, obviously Tiny Bubbles came before COVID, but the rest of them that you've been releasing, has that been born out of COVID, or is that just the way the industry is going?
No, I mean, we have 3 tasting rooms now, so we're constantly kind of dinking around with things that the tasting room needs. Steve, our head brewer, really wanted to make the Pilsner you're referring to is called Noble Tendencies, mm-hmm. And it's a Czech style Pilsner, and he really wanted to do something that was a little bit different. And we've had a port Pils in the past, and we've got a Helles, and we've got things that are lager, and nobody knows that we really make them because they're just tasting room beers for the most part. But of course, as a brewer, you want to hone your craft, and from time to time you run into things like heirloom barleys and stuff that are really fun, but really don't have a place in other Lost Abbey things. And so for us, it was kind of just like, let's take a stab at it. It's a really great drinking beer to have around, and there's a reason that Czech style beers are really incredibly fun to drink.
You saying take a stab at something though, that doesn't like that sort of strikes me as somebody who is just kind of getting into the industry right now, not necessarily somebody who is as established that they are a member of the First Name Club.
Yeah, but I mean, we established that First Name Club on a lot of really esoteric shit. So, maybe coming back around and learning to paint within the lines is part of the difficulty.
If you had to go back and pinpoint the esoteric shit, the beer that made your bones, what would you say it is? Or what would you hope it is?
Yeah, there was a lot of Saison kind of stuff that we were doing and playing around with, but back when I was at Pizza Port and then it transitioned to here, we have a beer called 10 Commandments, and it was formerly known as SPF 8 when I was in Solana Beach, but we wanted to produce a dark Saison, and that was a very unique process because we had been drinking a lot of different Phantoms and really looking at how many different ways you can make things dark. And that beer ended up having caramelized raisins in it, which at the time was sort of a very odd way to go about building color. But we got smoke and we got all kinds of, unique attributes from going down that path. But, I just remember standing up in front of people in a room and saying, not only do we make beers with raisins, and then this is the one that has the caramelized raisins, and then trying to explain what the hell a caramelized raisin was and why we would do it and altering chemical sugars and stuff like that. It was kind of it's very technique heavy.
You're 23 years into it now, though. If you were starting a brewery again right now, what do you think you'd be doing? Like with 23 years of knowledge? Like, would it be different from what you did back then? Would you have to give in to the industry pressures?
It's definitely something I've talked about sort of ad nauseum amongst friends, and that's kind of like, if I had to write a business plan today, what would it look like, and how many lines would I have to, which lines in the sand would I have to sort of get too close to, or maybe I didn't want to do. It was pretty rad having so much white space with respect to the artistic sort of pathway, versus so many people being sort of forced today to go down alleys that they maybe don't want to go down, just in order to pay the bills. So, I guess the question is it better to be an old school brewer that had to, kind of pave the roads for people, or, ourselves, versus being a new school brewer where the roads have been paved, but you're kind of forced to travel the same path that many people do.
What would you prefer? Like where you are right now?
I struggle with the today part because I don't like doing what everybody's doing, but at the same time, we're a much bigger company and we obviously have much different bills to pay than we used to. I like freedom. I'm a big proponent of controlling your own destiny. I'm a big fan of what amounts to be available perspective. Like if you think you can pull it off, then you should go for it. But there's a lot of copycat and a lot of stuff that's already been done going on. I'm not sure, and I think that was part of the reason for my talk was, how are we going to get back to a level of real innovation, and where is that going to come from?
So you won the Russell Shearer Award for innovation a couple years ago at the Brewers Association, I think when we were in Nashville, right?
Yeah, that didn't suck, by the way. That was a really cool thing.
It was a great, it's a well-deserved award, but it was also a very cool year to be down there. And when you're talking about now, this is going to be my next question, brewers being on a road that somebody else has paved for them, when do you just grab the wheel and just jerk left or jerk right and just start to drive off the road? Like when do you start to go off-roading?
I think I'm getting there. I think I'm reaching a boiling point where I'm like, man, all we're making is the same kinds of beers that a lot of other people are, and it's causing it's definitely causing consternation and my soul searching in terms of, I want to keep doing this, but I don't want to keep doing the same thing. So we're gonna have to find new ways to get off that path and go back, jungle, beating down the trees in the jungle and clearing the forest.
There's been seltzers, obviously, in the beer world now. We've seen the definition from the Brewers Association change of, craft beverage. It's not just beer anymore. You can be a cidery, you can have spirits, you can have all sorts of other things under your purview. And you're looking at tea.
Yeah, I've been threatening to work on a tea project for a long time, and it's always funny because my initials actually are T. So I am getting super close to being very aggressive with this as we move forward. I think that alternative beverages are going to be a part of portfolios, and this tea project for us is something that I wanted to do. I wanted to have a hard tea that was dry hopped and had a little bit of a real sort of not a pure beer edge necessarily, but had some complementary notes. So we've been producing red tea that's agave based. So about 5% alcohol, about 120 calories, and almost no carbs. And it looks bright red. It's got hibiscus and orange and lemongrass in it. People are really enjoying it at the tasting rooms. And we've got a black chai tea in the tanks currently. And there's a few more things that are in the what I would say is the innovation pipeline, which is mostly my head, that I'm going to try to get put together before the end of the year. But in the scheme of things, we have 4 brands in house currently, as you mentioned: Port, Lost Abbey, THC, and now Tiny Bubbles. But there's a 5th brand that's on the horizon, and we're getting ready to kind of talk about at a higher level.
I'm curious as to like where your brain goes, right? Because you have brewers, you have marketers, you do have staff that that works on all of these. You're still a lot the creative lead.
Yeah, I
How,
think
how,
that
how do
that's
you divide up your brain, in work time to give all of these different avenues the time that they need?
well, I definitely suck at the management part of this job, and I am in charge of the I am the chief in charge of guy, right? So hopefully we've got great marketing and brewing and production and all that stuff, and I do think that our team is really really well put together. The hardest part, frankly, in the last couple of years has just been the 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 way the industry is behaving, and just having to make a lot of financial decisions that we didn't used to have. And those are those are the parts of the day that make it really difficult to sit down and let the creative pieces flow. I typically have a beer or two before I head home to decompress after the day and just kind of watch what's going on at work. And then it's interesting because my drive home is only about 15 minutes, but the amount of, I guess, freedom that I give myself in the car, that 15 minutes is really impressive. How many things I can kind of just, almost after a full day of dealing with all the other stuff, that 15 minutes is where some of the most interesting stuff happens in my world.
That's a hard thing, I think, for a lot of people to get into these days. I've been talking with folks about unplugging. Especially during COVID, people are spending either more time at home or more time at the office, or especially in the hospitality industry, folks have been need to let go, and there's a lot of stress of businesses for the people who still remain. Sitting down and sort of just having 15 minutes to yourself. Did you have that beforehand? Have you always had that?
Before COVID or
Yeah.
before? Yeah, I mean, definitely I mean, I don't have it here. Like when I'm here, it's, we have kind of an open office floor plan. And for the most part, it's, kind of walk in, walk out. And there's not really, I don't have a desk up in the, back corner of the, 3 stories up in the office where you can't reach it. So, for me, it's just a function of, I often come to work and feel like I don't get anything done, but me getting something done is different than the company getting something done. So, I have to remind myself that in the past, getting something done was hooking hoses up to tanks and transferring beers and doing stuff, and measurable moments. I kegged XYZ, I transferred this, I brewed that. A measurable moment in a sort of a setting today is very different, and a lot of times it doesn't come with the same satisfaction of actually completing anything.
You're also not traveling all that much right now as well. I'd see you out on the road a couple of times a year, and even when I was there, and I think when you get to the level of brewer that you are, at least in my mind, and I think the mind of a lot of fans, you spend a lot of time giving lectures and traveling around the world and judging beer and doing all sorts of stuff. Has being grounded closer to home helped the brewery in the long run, do you think?
I don't know. It's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it. The last travel that I did was in February, and this was actually supposed to be a pretty robust travel season for me. In this summer, I was going to
Yeah,
be in
me too.
Europe, and
Yeah.
yeah. So there was a lot of anticipation about getting out and seeing some new things, and I got to travel to Costa Rica and Panama right before COVID hit, and that was a really cool trip. Just to see the infectious enthusiasm. God, great word. Great use of the word infectious.
It's,
Yeah,
it's too
the,
soon.
yeah, it is. The
I would say that we'd
enthusiasm.
bleep it out, but like we don't have
Yeah,
post-production here. So yeah.
that's fine. It's fine. We'll let it roll. The enthusiasm in South America was really, or in Central America was really cool. And I was in South America last summer as well. So, I really enjoy traveling, and I enjoy traveling for the right reasons. And that is that, I grew up basically studying English to be a teacher, and I wanted to educate people, and I get to go out on the road and do that, and I get to be passionate about beer, and it's a really cool avenue to sort of let all that information just kind of come flying back out. And I think that's one of the things that people really do appreciate when I travel is just that I'm very honest, and I give a lot of cool tidbits about having been around for a long time. This is not a fly by the night kind of thing. Doing it this long.
Is there honesty in the beer industry these days?
Honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's honesty and tragedy, though. I think there's a lot of people that are forgetting what this is about, and that is, we're supposed to be having fun, and of course we're redefining the industry, and there's all these new movements and definitions and chasms with purchases and buyouts, and there's it's the best of times and the worst of times, and at the same moment, there's still so much opportunity. Maybe there's more honesty today than there was in January. You asked about that. Maybe everybody's having to look in the mirror and say, am I going to make it? Not, of course I'm going to make it. And if I'm going to make it, what am I going to make it on?
You were just out in Denver, or I guess you were in Colorado, right? It wasn't actually Denver
Yeah,
proper.
it was actually in Louisville, which is a suburb of Boulder.
For Great American Beer Festival judging. And
Yeah,
you've been a judge for, gosh,
20
a lot.
years.
Yeah. What was it like this year?
It was fantastic. First and foremost, I don't want to overstate it, but it just felt good to be doing something that historically happens at this time of the year, and I enjoy judging beer, specifically within the confines of the World Beer Cup and the Brewers Association, the GABF. I really like the formatting, and I like the people that do it, and the volunteers, and all of that. So it just felt good, and I mean it's a true warm and fuzzy. To spend some time with people that you enjoy. It almost felt like the process slowed down this time because we judged over 6 days versus 3 days, and it had the same collegialness to it, but really it just felt better.
6 days though. That's like,
Well,
yeah.
they judged for more than 6 days. That's what I put in for. So I was there from Tuesday through Saturday. Morning and afternoon sessions, and the BA did a fantastic job of dealing with a lot of the methodology for providing a safe environment for judging the beers. I believe that the beers were judged in a very familiar pattern in terms of this is what we're used to doing and seeing and talking and and analyzing these beers. I believe that the awards will bear that out. I think that people will be very pleased with the results. But the BA spent almost 3 weeks judging beer, trying to make sure that they could get it all in.
And as far as like, but everybody, you can't have masks, you can't have PPE on while you're tasting, but like, before and
So we
after.
did
And
actually.
yeah.
So when we would show up, to the compound in the morning, they would take our temperature just to confirm that we were obviously good to go. At that point, we were handed a face shield as well as a mask, which was ours for the week. And while we were moving through the areas, we were forced to wear both the face shield and the masks. And then once we were seated and had beers in front of us, we were able to remove our masks, but the face shields remained on so that we had a physical barrier between the judges as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
How did that impact you as a judge, if at all?
I think a lot of people, it's always weird because you try to take a glass to your mouth and you got to go past the shield and come up underneath it. But
Yeah.
it was funny. I stopped referring to it as a shield and I started referring to it as an aroma cone, because so much of the aroma was being trapped behind the face shield, which was pretty interesting. I don't know if it'll change any of it. I did think, at one point I was sitting there, I'm like, this is quite different than what we're used to, and I wonder how it plays out.
How do you think it made you a better taster if you're talking about it as an aroma cone? Like we're because I haven't tasted with like a face shield on, so I'm trying to.
I can't speak to whether it did any. Think about tasting, and sometimes you can be, you can go to take a sip and something will pop into your head, but you were so focused on the mechanism of getting the beer from the table to your mouth and back without spilling and doing all this stuff that it became very rote. Like there was this real strong sense of pick beer up, tip under, up over, kind of thing. And I don't know. I feel like maybe it made for a very focused aroma session.
That's so interesting. When you travel and when you taste new beers, I'm often curious about how brewers approach new ingredients, things that are new to them, and how their brain works as to if they want to incorporate something into a beer, how they might incorporate something into a beer.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So I will tell you this. There's two very temporal things because they happened in the last week. I was judging non-alcoholic beers at the competition, and a beer hit the table.
Is that a new category?
No, they've always had non-alc, but this is now, I think, going to become a much larger category.
Yeah.
It's weird. Back in the day, it was a big category. It might have gone away for a while, and then because only the big guys were making it, and then there was a point where it was like, yeah, we don't need to judge that and give awards for things that craft people don't drink. But now all of a sudden, it is a thing. So I don't know. It'd be really interesting to look and see at what point it went away. Or I'm confident it went away at some point. And it has come back.
Okay.
But I did have a hazy, non-alcoholic IPA that really kind of stopped me in my tracks. Only in so much as I hadn't really even considered that someone would do that. For one,
because it's non-alcoholic when you're going into it, right? You're not just like judging hazy IPAs and then they say afterwards, it's non-alcoholic. Yeah.
No, it was not pull the blindfold off and be like, here's the Pepsi challenge. No, this was literally non-alcoholic category. So you knew as it was sitting on the table, less than 0.5%. And, you're kind of going down the line, and I had a pale ale, I had a brown ale, I had all kinds of different things, like from classic stuff to that. And I guess it made sense to me that you could have this, but hoppy beer that's not alcoholic doesn't necessarily, pop up on your radar that often. And it was just cool to see it. And that was an aha moment just in the scheme of things. I don't necessarily think I'm going to get out of bed any day soon and think I need to be in the non-alcoholic space. But that being said, I'm pretty sure that at some point there's going to be enough of them that I will have a favorite one. And that was cool. And then beyond that, there was another, I judged I don't even remember the category, but I judged another category, and there was a sage beer. And I have not ever really worked with sage, but every time I have sage beers, I always think, boy, those are very fun and interesting, at least aromatically, and on a flavor level, they're damn interesting. And so something along those lines would absolutely spark my head to be like, cool, we've never done it. What could we do with it, and where would it fit? So yeah, things like that are important in the landscape.
So I got to ask you this, because I'm if you just had a cool non-alcoholic beer, and the category we're certainly seeing is growing. It's minuscule in the U.S. right now, but in the U.K. it's and in Europe it's growing by a pretty strong amount. At what point, when you're talking about innovation and sort of turning off the road and forging your own path, or hacking through the jungle, do you say, okay, I'm going to get into this before everybody else does? Because 2 years ago, I was talking to brewers and saying, well, if you're not thinking about hard seltzer right now, you should be. And I thought, and I think that was probably the right time to be saying that. But I wouldn't say to a brewery these days, oh yeah, you should totally get into hard seltzer, because it's so crowded right now and everybody's trying to get into the marketplace, But what you're doing with tea strikes me as, it's still unexplored space. There's maybe, one or two or three, big tea makers that are out there, but those are more sugar water than I think what you're trying to do. When it comes to like non-alcoholic, is it better to be first, or is it better to just be better?
I mean, I think that the biggest challenge is that there's plenty of room in it, but the question is like, what are you going to do with it? Like, if we've got the guys here in San Diego that it's Athletic Brewing Company, and they're making
also Stratford, Connecticut, but yeah.
Yes.
I like that you're calling them of San Diego. They've been there for maybe about 7.5 minutes, but yeah.
I know, but they're the only non-alcoholic brewery in town, so at this point.
Whose space did they take over? They
Ballast, one of the Ballast places, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So for us, I think like it could be fun to be in the non-alcoholic category and to make things that were very beer-like and super technically proficient and had a lot of challenges associated with them. I don't know what the barrier in terms of cost is to go down the path of having the equipment to pull all that off. It clearly belongs in the realm right now of big money. I mean, those guys, that's not a small brewing company by dollars. They've got a lot of R&D money behind it and stuff like that. So I don't see it being super prohibitive to get involved in that yet, because there's just not enough of the technology that's easily assimilated into what we have. But I did think it was just interesting to sit down and look at beer from that angle, and it feels like it's always going to be a big guy thing, but clearly there's room for some small players in it. But if it ever truly takes off, in this country, then the big guys are going to stomp all over it because they've got such a running head start.
Yeah. How much do you still worry about big versus little? The lines have been blurred in the last couple of years, but
I don't know. I don't know that I ever really have. I guess it's part of my makeup is that we've never really competed with big. And a lot of that, I think, if you think about the Abbey style beers that we've made over the years, it's really never been about, the Abbey beers sitting next to Bud Light on a shelf. That's just such a strange, mechanism. But for us, I think big is big. And now it's more about like, what do you have access to, and what do you need? And I think that for us, maybe being a smaller brewery is always going to be important. We might have missed the window to scale this thing to a point, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Like, hey, we're going to be a much smaller brewery than you ever think we are. I think most people are shocked to see how big our brewing space is. We always tell people we're a little brewery with a big reputation, and they think that we're a big brewery when we're really not. So,
can you quantify that, like barrel wise?
I mean, we might make 10,000 barrels of beer this year, and that's down from a few years ago where we made 15. But at 15,000 barrels, I think we were in the top 150 in the country at that point or something. I mean, there weren't a lot of breweries that were 15,000 barrels, and certainly there weren't a lot of breweries over 100,000 at that point either. So, we were a larger brewery in scope, but at the same time, being a 10,000 barrel brewery right now probably puts us in the 500s or something. I don't even know. I don't even pay attention anymore,
yeah,
frankly. But it's not about how big of a brewery you're running. It's about what can you do with the equipment you have, and what do you want to be, right? And right now we're kind of being forced to be a little bit more of a commodity brewery until this stuff settles down and people figure out where we're at. We're making a lot of 6-pack and 4-pack beer right now to pay the bills.
Were there core beers? Were there Lost Abbey beers that surprised you with volume being moved in the early part of COVID?
No, because the Abbey brands, other than our Farmhouse Lager and our Devotion,
mm-hmm.
Which are the only two beers that we put in glass and in 6-pack, glass 6-packs at this point. They don't have a lot of grocery placements. Frankly, almost none. So there wasn't an appreciable, really, giant swing. We did see a little bit of an uptick as people were buying, 'packaged beer from us to go home, and a lot of people were buying 6-packs of those to take home. And, we did see a little bit of an uptick as people were buying, 'packaged beer from us to go home, and a lot of people were buying 6-packs of those to take home. And, we did see a little bit of an uptick as people were buying, 6-packs of those to take home. to enjoy a couple per night sort of thing. But we definitely, the Abbey brand has been impacted by, more than anything, the lack of people buying single bottles anymore. And that's something we're going to have to sort of meter out and figure out as we move into 2021 and beyond, which is, what does the Abbey brand look like and where is it supposed to be?
Makes sense. When we get out of this, if we get out of this, but hopefully
let's go with if. Right?
Yeah.
Let's start with if. Although I love the enthusiasm for when.
It's hard to have enthusiasm these days.
It's positive more than negative. Right?
Yeah, well, it's what I'm known for. What do you want to do?
What do I want to do when we get out of this? I want to celebrate, I think, for one, that we definitely, nobody had this on their bingo card. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of things that we learned. I hope that people are a little bit more compassionate than we were beforehand. We're going to have to explain to the generation behind us and behind them the damage that was done for everyone. I mean, this is...
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, we're going to be paying for this for a long time. And how that behaves and what that means to my daughters and family and people, it's a big deal. But, you basically said if and when, and we're still in an if-when function here. We
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And frankly, on a business level, we're not out of it yet. So, every day is don't become a what was, but at the same time, nothing's given. And, we have to keep earning it. And I guess for me that the scary part is I don't think we've seen the level of closings that were forecasted. And I still think that there's a lot of closings that could come out of this. And I feel like there's some pretty key players that aren't going to make it as well.
I think we're getting to that. Unfortunately, I want to end on a more positive note. Let's remember Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry that he's passed away, but I think his music has brought so much joy and so much fun to everybody. And before we started recording, I got on the phone with you. We started talking about it, and his music speaks to you.
Yeah, and I think it's crazy. Like when you start to, 210,000 people have died this year of a disease, of a curable thing. But at the same time, it's like, we've also lost a lot of really other good people with, totally outside of that. And I know that's normal. But, you want to talk about things that are uplifting. Like my Padres are going to play in a playoff game tonight. Things are okay in baseball land. At least we're playing baseball. So,
yeah,
drink some beer and enjoy that. But sucks to lose a great one.
Yeah, and we should also talk about Mike McDowell, who we lost this week. Tasty.
Yeah, Tasty over the weekend too.
What a wonderful human being he was, and a great home brewer, and great part of the brewing network, and guy we all enjoyed hanging out with when we could.
It is one of those things, man. Each day is worth savoring, and every day is worth appreciating. But it doesn't make it easy when you get out of bed and the same shit happens every other day. But when it's all said and done, there is beer at the end of the day. It still tastes really damn good, and for that we should be thankful.
Well, let's go do that. Tommy, thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it as always, John. Thanks.
Before we go, I'm going to remind everybody to tune in to Steal This Beer with new episodes every Monday, and to the BYO Nano podcast, which comes out on the 15th of every month. And of course, check out Andy Crouch on the Beer Edge podcast with new episodes every week. Nate Schwaber does the music. Jeff Quinn designed the logo. New episodes of this show release every Wednesday. And Tommy, thanks again.
Yeah. Can't wait to be back as your sidekick.
Well, when I do, we'll drink beer and we'll think beer.